known speaker. So he never broke, crash WhatsApp, no nothing. So he's one of my best friends on top of that. So all yours, Pablo. Thank you very much, Roman. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being here. You've been here for 3 days. So you went out 2 nights in a row. I believe that you are really tired. I really thank you for being here. My name is Pablo San Emeterio. I am an IT engineer. I took a master's course in auditing and security. Since January, I've been working in 11 Paths, which is the cybersecurity unit at Telefonica, and my Twitter name shows on the screen. First of all, I would like to uh, ask you for a big applause to the organization. So they have this double track once more, and they have chosen the same venue than last year. Big applause for them. And we were lucky to listen to speakers, remarkable speakers such as Nico, because I had for some work reasons, I couldn't attend Miko's presentation, so he had very interesting ideas to share with us. The first one being, I think I forgotten now, I can't remember. Right, the first thing he told us about IoT, which is very trendy now. We are starting to have very many things that are connected as well as in an insecure manner. And he gave us a very good tip to tackle that, which is regulation. So we are not expecting to get electrical shock from a refrigerator or a washing machine. We should not expect that our life becomes public when we just buy one of these devices. Also, another relevant idea from his presentation were the cyber weapons that are already here. They are affordable, efficient, and you can also you can deny having used them. So therefore, he compared that with using B-52 against Stungen. I don't know how much it will cost to use a B-52, and I believe it will be more or less the same price. There is something which I didn't like as much, though. It was in the question and answer session when someone asked him what we could do to prevent flaws or mistakes that we often find. And he said that there are two types of errors. Sometimes error comes from code. The source code is vulnerable. You open it, you fix it, and one less flaw. The problem comes from humans. As he said, we cannot open up people's brain and reprogram it so that they stop clicking what they shouldn't click on, to execute and open and run programs, or to download free apps which are never fully free. And I agree with what he said, but I disagree with what he said about that we have to wait for the next generation to fix that. That generation that were born surrounded by the internet, and that we should die. So that generation all the time posting selfies just to make their friends feel envious. They want to be YouTubers. They want to be famous on the internet. I'm sorry to say that they are not careful with their security. They do not protect their security. And I don't believe that I have to die so that things become secure. But in general, his presentation was very good, and I liked it very much. I liked what he said about cyber weapons and IoT specifically. So the origin of my presentation comes from two references in the world of security, one of them being Roman, I met Roman in the master's course on security that I took, and he really impressed me. So Roman, please come over here, stay here, come to the stage. I know that RoutinCon has a rule, that is to say that you organizers do not give presentations and stands. So part of this presentation, sources has your ideas. So I very much thank you for being there, for staying there. Okay, and this is a slide that I want to show. Okay, I just don't want to miss this opportunity to show this slide. And as I said, Roman is a very good friend. So we often have very interesting conversations, but although not as frequent conversations as I'd like them to be. And out of those conversations, some interesting ideas come out. So for instance, Kung Fu Malware, we just got a prize in JNIC, so this is your prize. And we also went to a cyber camp, and then it also allowed us to go to Black Hats. It was my first Black Hat. I don't know whether it was your first Black Hat as well or not. No, it was not. It was not my first Black Hat. And the other person is David. David Barroso. He needs no presentation. He is a great professional. You all know him. And he is a better person than professional, if any. So I've been lucky enough to work with him for a couple of years in Telefonica. Then he left Telefonica. He set up his own company and to work on cyber espionage and then to come up with techniques to fight the evil guys. This slide, I took it from David. So this is what has happened in the last 16 years. These are the technologies and the elements that we've seen. We started back in the 2000, focusing on perimeter. Some companies are still doing that, even 16 years later. Then in 2004, we started to focus on monitoring. Later on 2006, so we could see that cable access gave access to everyone, so therefore it was needed to do something in that regard. Then in 2008, we started to discuss data infiltration, and then in 2010, we started to talk about threat intelligence, that is to say, people selling IOCs to us that have been compromised before.
In 2013, we had the hype to share everything with everyone. The truth is that I was lucky enough to attend an event 1.5 years or 2 years ago where several vendors were present. When they talked about their products and solutions, they had an element in common. They had something in the cloud, and they had something around big data. At that time, I was quite struck, because I was wondering, these guys usually sell boxes, so why should they get into these technologies? Step by step, and I just remembered what Miko said, data is the new gold, or the new oil. What they were starting to do was intelligence based on the elements that they could gather through your appliances. In these intelligence networks, they may have 1,000 names, GTI or ATI. What is usually shared is tons of hashes, tons of binaries that we have no idea whether they affect us or not. If they belong to a bank in Bangladesh or if they are related to us. They don't usually have that much of a context. One of the main, and many of these hashes, by the way, are known by VirusTotal or VirusTotal. VirusTotal is the main storage location for viri in the world. Google bought it, actually, because they make money out of data. And by the way, a sample not appearing in VirusTotal means that the antivirus engines don't know anything about them. When a sample is completely new, that's it. You send a sample, and you get a verdict from VirusTotal telling you whether it's good or bad. Once they have it, if it's bad, they share it, and your malware starts to be known. The problem is that people making malware know about this perfectly in detail. Threat intelligence, this comes from David, although this was put together by John Lambert, who is the director on threat intelligence at Microsoft. Companies realized that they did not have enough with their own solutions and started using something else, using feeds on information and feeds on threats. So they have the chart showing the effort and showing the effectiveness, the two indicators. When you start using threat intelligence, you usually go into this place, which is like a death valley where productivity is really low. You see IPs, hashes. If you see a hash coming from malware, you start looking for that hash in every single computer in your company. If you're unlucky enough to find that hash, what do? Do you remove the computer altogether? Is it an executable file? Is it a TXT file with the same signature? And if you're lucky and find the malware in a computer in your company and you remove it from the network, if it's the secretary's computer, no problem. But what happens if the computer that got infected in the first place is controlling a PLC for a conveyor belt, for an automated silo, for a barrier at a car park, or for a nuclear reactor? What do you do with that computer? How do you fight against that malware? The baddies, one of the things that happens with them, as Miko said, they're well organized and they're very well specialized. They're organized in such a way that there is a number of people making malware. There's another group of people who is in charge of finding or buying 0 days. Others collect the money. Others recover the money, and that's the mules. And now that Bitcoin has arrived, they are probably becoming a call center to help people handle their Bitcoins. And they're also specialized, as I said, and very well organized. They have attacks that are very sophisticated, attacks in place that are very sophisticated. And these are not well-known companies. They don't trade in the stock exchange. They're one-man orchestras, if you like, okay? A jack of all trades. They can do a website, they can develop an application, they can resolve an incident in the secretary's workstation, and obviously security is not part of their priorities. This is the IT stuff in any company, okay? The bad ones are not only well organized and specialized, they're also creative. Malware from Popcorn proved that they had imagination to keep ransomware businesses alive. If for whatever reason you cannot pay or are not willing to pay to recover your data, you can infect 2 other people that whenever they pay will get your password. In this specific example, this is interesting because we came up with a solution. If you had a virus from Popcorn, you could retrieve the passwords. They were creative, but they didn't have that much experience in developing malware. This is yours. Do you want to talk about it? This is Roman's slide, and it is a very good summary of the situation we're in. In any company, there's usually 2 teams when they've got the budget, of course, and they can afford it. They've got 2 teams. They have Team Red, which attacks, just as an attacker would do, and they have Team Blue, which is the guys in charge of defending the company. You see that there is no balance between the 2 sides? This is on purpose. This is deliberate. Because the field the Team Red uses is much larger. The Team Blue has to face all sorts of things. Compliance, internal audits, their bosses, the fact that they have children, reviewing reports about compliance. They have to check that vulnerabilities can be patched or cannot be patched because the company doesn't have the software that is needed for it. It may be because it's very expensive. It may be because it is not useful, then my boss's boss, the police, the budget available. And what do the bad ones need? One thing. One weak point in your infrastructure to get into it and compromise everything. But then, the thing is that the talk from David proved that the bad ones are also people. They are human, they have children, they have problems with their budget, they sleep, they have challenges themselves. And this slide is very revealing in that sense. This is the pyramid of pain. The bad ones also have a pyramid of pain for themselves. So based on the location you touch, you harm them more or less. Hash values, changing a binary and making it work is trivial. Once they detect that the binary has been detected, they change the hash and keep attacking you. That's trivial. If we go up into the pyramid of pain, we have IP addresses. If you detect an IP address for the malware and you block it, it's relatively easy for them to change the IP address. A little bit more than changing the hash. And the same goes for domain names. If you go up one level and you detect a domain name, it will cost them a little bit more than changing the IP. And here we get to a place where we really bother them, okay? Network or traces or samples that we can collect. If you, for example, if the baddie has programmed an attack and in order to communicate is using HTTPS or HTTP, and the header with the user agent is saying that they're using Firefox on Windows 7, and you know that you have no Windows 7 in your company because everyone is running Windows 8, you have an element to detect the bad one, you will be detecting the bad one even if they change everything else, but they don't know what they need to change. It could be a directory where files are stored or any other element. One step further up, obviously things get more difficult. I mean, it makes life more difficult for them, but they're more difficult to detect from our side. Tools. Being able to detect the tools they're using, being able to know the compilers they're using, the offensive tools they're using, all of that. I mean, we're all human, and we use a range of tools in our work. I use one compiler more than any other, and when I have to use the other one, it bothers me. It bothers me because I'm not as skillful with the other one. And then there are tools we prefer over some other tools. Having to move from Python to Ruby or from Python to Perl will cost them. It will harm them. And last but not least, at the very top of that pyramid of pain, which is very difficult to reach, that's where you really harm them, is where we talk about tactics and procedures. When you know that a group attacking you always uses a search for the sysadmin, they send an office file with a number of macros, and they always do it on a Friday at around 3 in the morning to catch the sysadmin at home. Well, then you have an element that you can use to detect who it is and what they're doing. So going back for a minute to that slide on trends, that's 2013 on let's share. Everyone started sharing. Oh, I have a little bit of this, you have a little bit of that, give me a few hashes, I'll give you a few IPs. So we shared tons of things. If you take a look towards the end, 2016, let's generate threat intelligence. It was around mid-2016, towards the end of that year perhaps. So we moved from sharing billions of tons of things without a context to start using our own things, the things that are impacting us, or things coming from attackers. So a change in paradigm, really. So, an interesting idea, using that type of things. What can we use to try and generate some private intelligence? How about putting something on Dave and blocking everything by default for Dave. So anything you start will be blocked by default. And I will analyze it and see if I can allow you to execute it or not. On the other hand, we have the evolution of the project, Kung Fu malware, in version 2. In that Kung Fu project for malware, for those of you who haven't heard about it, let me explain first. This is a project based on an idea which was not new. At first we felt it was a new thing. We thought we were the sexiest guys on earth, but then we realized that that wasn't the case. Ricardo reminded us that there were some academic papers back in 2008 talking about these solutions. Kung Fu malware, what is this all about? Malware has evolved since the very first time when malware was created because of ego stuff. When people tried to prove that they were better than anyone else, it moved to the side of money, pure cash. The main goal there was to get money, infecting computers, hiding so that you would remain undetected, even attacking states, and malware started implementing a lot of evasive techniques. Evasive techniques coming from analysis techniques and sandbox techniques. So then we thought about how about making a normal computer become an analysis environment. A lot would be deactivated, but we found a weak point. What do you do with those that don't hide, with those that attack directly? How about ransomware that attacks directly and doesn't care about whether they are in an analysis environment? So the first answer that came to my mind was, well, we'll see it in the sandbox for sure. We have a sandbox in the night table, and we're just waiting to get attacked. And merchants with little shops in the high street have a sandbox as well. Obviously not, I'm just joking. So we were a bit bothered by that weak point. We couldn't resolve it. And then David started thinking. He said, how about we stop the process? We throw it to a communication point, and in that communication point we have a lot of security solutions that will determine what that thing is doing in order to decide whether we allowed it to run or not. So that's Kung Fu malware. We use AMPQ. It's AMQP. Sorry, that's the right acronym. AMQP. We use SBus to throw all sorts of samples so that solutions, security solutions, are connected. Sandbox, antivirus, Norton, and things that tell us about the traffic, which give us a verdict about the element that Bob is trying to execute, whether it's good or bad. And there's nothing new about this. Vendors have implemented them. Stopping the process, this is something that many vendors do. Communication between different solutions, there's 2 vendors out there that do it. But this is based on proprietary technology, so that you have to be tied to one vendor only. But we preferred, obviously, to use an open technology where you could set a pool of resources. All the analysis tools you might be interested. Analyzing attachments coming through email, using antivirus, using sandboxes. Another element you would need for private intelligence, because all of these will be threats aimed at you. There's a database. Once I do the analysis, I don't want to do it again every day. So let's go for 20, 30, 60 days perhaps, but set up a database. And the last point to have an environment with private intelligence would be a bridge or a gateway. A gateway that allows you to connect to RabbitMQ, and then IOCs, IPs, or domains can be communicated over to the corresponding solution so that they get blocked. The demo comes now. Okay, you're allowed to sit now. You've been in the picture, yes? But it's not complete yet. I'm only showing you an example, an easy example, because I didn't have the time to finish everything for all solutions. I didn't have the time for also huge solutions on all the gateways. So I always use two basic solutions telling me whether this is good or bad, but we need to move beyond that, okay? This is a very preliminary stage I'm in. We have an interpreter here. We will have Bob executing things here. Right, here we have Windows, and this is Bob. Then got a file, that could be this one. Files, baddie, Visual 3. You open it up, and here, when you execute, you have the interpreter. Very easy. Over to Windows. I've loaded the driver. I'll tell you about the details later on, about what it does exactly. And if I can move it, I'm having such a pain with Ubuntu. You launch it, and this is suspended. You could have killed it if you knew it was malicious, and now the bad one, the baddie, doesn't have anything. So I have stopped Bob from clicking everywhere. How did I do this? Well, this is a Linux driver for the Windows kernel. There's a callback. At that point in time, you call a hidden function in the kernel that stops the process and alerts that user space so that we know about the name of the executable that was launched, getting all the arguments that are being used to launch it. In this case, you launch it with WSS script, which is a legitimate program, and the problem is with the arguments in that malicious file, which is what is bothering you. Those two files you throw into RabbitMQ. There are solutions analyzing the two files, giving you a positive or a negative. In this case, it would be negative for WSS script and positive for the analysis on malo3 dot Visual Basic. And automatically, as soon as you see the address it is going to, because you can connect it to a sandbox, you can do suricata or whatever. You can block the IP address, the proxies or the firewalls, anything. Acknowledgements, I still have some time. I just remembered Miko. Acknowledgements to Roman, to David, who have helped me and have lent me their slides. Julio is a colleague at work who helps me with panels and dashboards. I haven't showed you anything because I've been working on indices during today, nothing to show. And Sergio, who is the one that helped me in 11 parts. If you have any questions, I have the first one. When will you have the bloody driver available in Linux? Well, I agree with Sergio. I want to see it work in Windows and then I'll move it over to Linux. How many users do you know? Windows versus Linux? How many users in Linux would like to have a driver to prevent this from happening? Nah, not fair. Okay, I take a note of that. This is the second time around that you do this to me. More questions? At the top, another one there. There's one there, there's another one there. When the client is offline, what happens? Good question. Here, we have a number of things we need to resolve. You might lend me a hand. When the client is offline, what it does, it gets blocked. Nothing is executed. So you can have something like a local cache where whatever is allowed, at least you shouldn't do too many things with the company username. But with the local cache, you should have a number of things allowed to execute. Okay, so that you have basic functionality offline. When you say offline, it means no connections. In theory, the ideal way to do this would be through whitelist and not through blacklist. Otherwise, you would become another antivirus. So this is an idea, okay? We just wanted to implement a folder where you could have a whitelist of what can be modified by a document so that you couldn't be attacked with ransomware. If you have Office documents in a folder and you suddenly see that the person is trying to write on a certain file in that folder is not the Office that you're using, obviously something is wrong. So the idea is that if you're offline, you have a local cache, but based on a whitelist, not on a blacklist. I was thinking when you're in the plane, working, and you start executing, and then you come back home and realize that lots of things were suspended. Suspensions are deliberate, so that you can see in the Process Explorer. You should kill it, okay, rather than suspend it. And I'm sorry I'm jumping in, because I don't want to give you a talk. This one thing, this question came to my mind, right? Suddenly. Dave notices that Internet Explorer doesn't start. So he starts clicking away like mad, like crazy. How do you do the hooking here? Is there a way to prevent him from filling the RAM with stop processes? That hook is in the kernel. This is a normal function that you can find in the API from MSN by Microsoft. PS create, destroy, process, something like that. PS something, create process. The final name I can't remember. That routine tells you whenever a process is created. And then, just as it notifies you that processes are being created, we haven't implemented anything to prevent that compulsive behavior, clicking away like crazy. But you could add this. If in a period of 1 minute you try to start Internet Explorer 30 times, well, there's 25 too many. Could you do that through mutex? You take the name of the process, the arguments. If you have a match, it is simply not started. Yes, you could go that way. And then something else, the problem you mentioned on emulating in normal computers the behavior of a sandbox, or the indicators that make malware believe that they're sandboxes. When malware encounters a sandbox, it deletes the MBR, and that's it. Yeah. It's about blocking everything that starts at the beginning, before executing it in first instruction. If we detect any behavior and the sandbox disappears, you will not give a yes answer to I allow you to execute. You would have a proof that something strange is happening. The problem is that someone will try and find your solution, and as they find it, that's it. This is not a commercial product. We're not saving anybody's lives. This is a proof of concept, okay? We've encountered ourselves malware that uses site loading in Windows. The process is completely legitimate, but the DLL has been cooked deliberately. There's also another function, another callback function, that tells you whenever a DLL is mapped. This is something that we would like to focus on. Anything mapped in terms of DLLs, perhaps you might have them signed. Thank you. Another question right there. Another question. Have you contemplated how to make this grow within an organization. I mean, this is okay for a computer at work, but if you have a company with 40,000 computers downloading software, I mean, if you expect this to be applied to everyone, every single computer, this is extremely complex. I mean, not a very feasible business. In what sense? Can you give me more details? Well, just you may have this little company with 40,000 employees who are executing different versions of software. Okay, we can sign them, we can verify them, whatever. But unfortunately, and that's my experience, many users download software because they needed to do something. So they download the software as it comes, they execute it, and then they realize that they're a big shit. And then they tell you that they've used it because they had a deadline they had to meet. Have you thought about large-scale environments? Well, the database, big data we could use. We can try to store. The first person executing will have a long process, okay? That will be long. Maybe the sandbox will take 5-6 minutes to get a response. But once you have that response that tells you whether that's good or bad, the rest of the company will go against the report that was generated already. So everyone is authorized. If you are unlucky enough to have one downloaded, which is a bad one, well, your life is saved. Let's go back to the previous question. Whitelists. What you need to do is anything good included in your whitelist, and use a criterion so that instead of suspending or blocking, I mean, this is my story. In Guipúzcoa, in the province of Guipúzcoa in northern Spain, and programmers in Java, I hate them so much. There are no interactions with anything, I don't notice anything, and I use my machine very intensively. But this is not a product, okay? This is not a commercial product. This is in Pablo's GitHub available. Not a commercial product, a proof of concept.
Hola. Hola. Hola, buenas.
Hello. I'd like to answer to the person who asked the question about how to apply that in large scale. The problem is not that. The problem is the company's policy. Often when you want to implement a new technology, not just implementing, but just installing new software needed by any department, you have to follow some policies in place. Since day one, when a new user joins the company, other than his profile, you need to have some templates, a policy, and all those are standardized. So that, and the policy states that no user is allowed to install anything, no matter how knowledgeable he is. So nowadays, any company, despite the size of it, has a number of policies in place. And some companies also require ISO certifications, any ISO certifications. Others, even if they do not have a policy, they apply that policy by default. So the issue is not how to implement the tool of these people. So the problem is the type of policies implemented in the company. We just cannot delegate everything or to put the blame to a tool that doesn't work properly. Because as been very rightly said here, the main problem comes from humans. So human errors, no matter the tool that we use, if there is a human error, no one will do anything to fix it. And I fully agree with you. And I also would like to add something that has happened in the security sector. Well, you have managed me to kind of give a talk. Right, something that has happened in the security universe was the following. Some stupid people designed or came up with the concept aligned with the business, okay? Aligned with what? Come on, fuck off. If you were truly aligned with your business, security will not be optional, and you will not laughing at my face every time I tell you that that has to be blocked. And as you said, security places strict security policy should be in place. No one should install any software because it's been downloaded from a cool place, including advertising to it. But what happens? Organizations are complex. We have the board of managers. People do not understand that a single vulnerability is enough to take out of a tendering process, and we experts in securities are not doing things well. You don't negotiate with a firefighter brigade whether they may have a problem because the steel in the ladder is not the right one. So being alienated by the business is extremely dangerous. Other questions? I get really heated. All right, so if there are no more questions, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Pablo. Important things before we finish.